Mercedes are entering the Melbourne Grand Prix with a lot of questions to answer on their 2024 form, and it seems like bringing back an old part on their car could answer a huge part of their problems if it turned out to be efficient for the kind of issue they've encountered in the first two races. After having the worst start of a season since 2012, Mercedes admitted to be making a lot of experiments in Melbourne in trying to find more performance in the high-speed corners, and their latest solution might have been standing in front of their noses the whole time. So, will this actually solve Mercedes' issue in terms of high-speed corner performance? And if so, to what extent? Melbourne is a track that has a medium requirement of downforce, which pushed Mercedes to a low-loaded rear-wing choice, putting them in an advantage when it comes to the top speed of the car, but sacrificing a bit of grip and high-speed corner performance for the sake of it. The difference between Jeddah and Melbourne, even though the nature of the corners do have their own similarity, is that Melbourne is a circuit in which you could balance things more, which means that you can search for the missing performance in the high-speed corner throughout other parts of the car. In this particular case, that would be the floor of the car. We all know that Mercedes struggled a lot in Jeddah to follow the McLaren of Norris in Section 1, and now that the team will look forward to solve this scenario, it's evident that introducing the old new version of the floor that they had in pre-season testing would be a bold decision to say the least. But given the extent of the issue and the deficit that the team had in the previous Grand Prix in this section, this is exactly what they need: bold choices in order to find the sweet spot of the car, even though both of their drivers were quite pessimistic when it came to being competitive in the upcoming weekend. However, the plan has been drawn and the situation couldn't be clearer for Mercedes. Learn as much as you can with this foundation and make sure that the upgrades that would be mounted further down the road will push you in the right direction, and the floor is the first step towards that. Elaborating about Mercedes' hopes in Melbourne, Wolff went on to say, "It's encouraging to see the potential in the W15, but there are also clear areas of improvement. We have looked competitive in low and medium speed corners, but high speed has been a weakness so far. We've been working hard to understand why our performance has reflected our expectations, and improving that is a major focus. We hope to make some initial progress for Melbourne, and that work will guide our development in the weeks ahead. It's great to feel the energy and determination running through the factories as we work to unlock the potential of the car." Even though Mercedes made a huge step forward with the W15, addressing some of the key issues of the car, it's evident that some problems still persist, and if you cannot make the car go fast in high-speed corners, then it's effectively a bad car regardless of how much work you've put into it. To address this issue, Mercedes will be trying out the floor they used during the pre-season testing in Bahrain. Elaborating on this matter, Harry Benjamin, who is a BBC F1 commentator, went on to say, "Mercedes made a step up for sure since last year, but the main issue, and perhaps this is affecting Hamilton more so than Russell, is that they're struggling for pace in high-speed corners. There's even rumours about some possible simulator correlation problems, because what they're seeing in the simulator is not happening out on track. I've heard that this weekend they might be trying to bring in an old new floor, basically the floor that they used in testing in Bahrain. Then they made some changes for the first race, and while they've brought some good side effects, they've also brought some negatives as well. It's evident that the efforts of finding out the true performance of the car won't stop anywhere near soon, and it's key that Mercedes starts to understand its car sooner rather than later, because there's a lot at stake here. What has become obvious again is that Russell is more comfortable in driving a car that is struggling a bit with the balance and its overall performance compared to Hamilton, who has been dubbed to go his own way in terms of setup of the car and pray that he'll find a half a second of performance out of nowhere. While it does seem like a far-fetched scenario, the platform on which Mercedes is working is now vastly different compared to the previous years. But in order for them to see the true potential of the car, it's obvious that the simulator data needs to correlate to the real test on the track, and that's something that the team has been struggling a lot with in the past couple of weeks. With a huge emphasis being put on the downforce requirements of the car, Mercedes have opted with an interesting choice for Melbourne: top speed over grip and high-speed performance. But obviously, they've learned a thing or two from Jeddah. Melbourne, though, could prove to be a big challenge again, due to the fact that the high-speed corners are not the only section in which the car would require high levels of downforce. The braking points belong here too. On the contrary, the frequent but short straights means that Mercedes will be looking forward for the overtaking opportunities, combined with the DRS inefficiency of McLaren. And all in all, it would be a very interesting weekend to see whether or not the experiments of the Silver Arrows would work in the right direction. George Russell has talked about the mountain that Mercedes needs to climb in order to be competitive yet again, as the team has made a test plan for the remainder of the 2024 season that could put them up in competition for podiums and race wins, even though the odds look extremely stacked against them right now. After the initial promise the car made in Bahrain, the Silver Arrows were quickly grounded by the real upgrades that were showcased by teams like Ferrari and McLaren. And when talking about the upcoming Grand Prix in Melbourne and his own expectations with all the experiments and tests coming down the pipeline, Russell went on to add, "We've gone well here in the last 2 seasons, and at one point we were fighting for the win last year. We've learned so much about the W15 from the first 2 races, and I think we're definitely going out tomorrow to test a lot of things on the car to get a better handle on how to get the most out of what we have in our hands. Ultimately, we're not here to fight for P2, we want to be fighting for the victory, and we know it's a mountain to climb. It swings very quickly in the sport. Going through our meeting this morning, seeing Aston Martin on the podium, if somebody said that after the first 6 races last year they'd finished P5 in the championship, you wouldn't believe it. I think that just goes to show how quick things can change. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, all of these changes need to be made by being synchronized with the test results they've been receiving from the simulator. And according to the trackside engineer Andrew Shovlin, the behavior of the car in a certain speed range is giving the sensors of the car certain information in the simulation that the car does not translate on track. That did not make Mercedes an overconfident team, it's just very likely that they're going to shift the mentality and the attitude with which they're viewing stuff, because as of now the team measures a certain amount of downforce in the simulator, but that amount isn't found in lap time. And even though this is a very serious issue, Wolff is adamant that there are lots of positive things that Mercedes should be looking forward to in Melbourne due to the positive history of the team in this track, even with them approaching the season with a brand new concept of the W15. Elaborating on this matter even further, Wolff pinpointed the goals of Mercedes in the following weekend. As he elaborated, "We left a lot of points on the table back in Bahrain and Jeddah. We started off each weekend strongly, running our usual practice program, but couldn't deliver on that initial promise. With the chasing pack being so close, maximizing the potential of the car each weekend is the key. Albert Park gives us another chance to show what we can do. It's a great circuit in a great city, with a passionate and vocal fan base, and we look forward to returning." This is also a tricky time for Mercedes because they cannot count on the help of Hamilton, who while had all of his needs listened to and implemented on the W15, is still struggling to find performance from this challenging car. The fact that it's the worst start for Mercedes since 2012 goes to show a lot of things, and if you add the fact that the 7-time world champion's motivation to turn things around in this season will be close to 0, you'll have an ever more troublesome situation that the Brackley-based squad would have to fix sooner rather than later if they are to be competitive in the foreseeable future. Still, Hamilton believes that the car has unlocked potential due to this new approach the engineers made back in Brackley. It's just up to the entire team to unlock as much as they can from Melbourne onwards, and more importantly, for Mercedes to build on this momentum for the upcoming campaign as well. With this in mind, what do you think about Mercedes returning to their old floor? And more importantly, do you think it's going to open a lot of doors for them as they entered the yet another painful data collection process for the 3rd consecutive year? Let us know in the comments below.